Just like me, then it's alright. Just go get it wrong. Go get it wrong. I want somebody to tell me that I'm not alone. That we're not alone. Good evening, everyone. Hope you're all well and enjoying the spring season so far. It's starting to even get quite hot, hey? But what can we say? I would like to introduce our speaker today, Nasi Simbuye, who will be telling us more about Express Design in Power Apps. Good evening, Nasis. How are you?
I'm good and you, Kevin. Sorry about that. I was muted.
No, it's okay. I'll hand over to you so that you can explain to us more about Express Design. Enjoy, everyone.
Thank you. So today we won't really be focusing on express design, but instead we'll just be building up on top of it, basically. On last week Thursday, Someleze showed us an extensive walkthrough about power. I mean express design, and I'm just gonna use it to integrate AI.
No
Yeah.
problem.
So we'll get started. Share screen. How's you enjoying your day? while we
Ah,
wait
it's
for the snow to
hot.
come.
It's very, very hot. Spring has really come. And
To
on
be
your
honest, I
side?
didn't. To be honest, I didn't even recognize it was spring.
Ah, which planet do you live in?
I don't know. Only on the 2nd of September I realized it was spring.
Yo, didn't you feel the heat or anything?
No, no, nothing has changed. But as you said, it's slowly becoming hot, and also the sun is coming up a bit earlier than usual.
True, true. Because this time normally it's dark.
Yeah. Anyways, so to get started, I would like to touch based on what we've been doing. To touch base on what we have been doing. Um, yeah. So I would like to touch base on what we have been doing. So throughout the past few weeks, we have seen different types of studios in natural language processing. A few 2 weeks ago, we touched on Speech Studio, and then we also touched on the Language Studio as well. So now we want to salvage all these tools, these AI tools, into an application. We want to salvage these tools into our websites, and how about can we go about making these things? So in previous episodes, we've made the Language Studio using code, and now we're going to touch upon making this Language Studio and even the Speech Studio using Power Apps, a low code, no, less code, more power. Basically, it's for those who don't have any programming background, who are new to programming and like to get started. This is for you. You don't have to learn how to code to actually use AI. So there's the studio, as you can see, right? Today for the Language Studio, I'll be focusing on sentiment analysis. We're going to analyze how people are feeling through what they write or do it via their text. So here's sentiment analysis, right? I'm just going to write an example. I'm super excited. I am super excited. I'm super excited. So there's the text over there, which I've just written. I'm super excited. And then I'm going to scan it to get a result. I want to highlight something. So run. So there you go. We got our results, as you can see, 98%, 2%, 1%. And now there's something over here called JSON, right? So JSON is like stands for JavaScript Object Notation. It's basically a format to pass information via the website, via APIs. APIs is the Application Programmable Interface. So this is our JSON. We're gonna use this JSON into our Power Apps in order for us to make our applications, right? So now that we have done that, now we see exactly where we're getting our source. We're now gonna jump to Azure because that's where the starting point of everything is, right? We're gonna jump to Azure. So I have my Azure portal opened already. I have my Azure portal open. So in order for you to get started, the first thing that you have to do is first create your text analytics resource on Azure. So I'm just going to search text, and then text analysis. Text analysis. So as you can see, text analysis is already there. I'm going to click on it to create. I'm going to create a new resource from scratch. I won't create it, but I'm just showing you how to get started because it's what we're going to need in order for us to make our application, right? So now there's our text analytics resource on Azure, and all I'm simply going to do is go to create, right? Text analysis. Okay, not text analysis, my bad, language. Um, it's under language. So you're gonna search for language on Azure, and then the one it's gonna pop up language. Click on language. After clicking on language, click create resource, create resource, and then you fill in all the documents that you need to do, the dev boxes that you need to fill in. You fill it in, and then after that you have your resource created, which I won't create again because you've already created it. If you want more information on how to create, you can watch our previous episodes. So now we have our our language resource created, which we're gonna need, right? So the language resource allows us to utilize Azure's natural language processing capabilities of via Azure. So now we're gonna use this tool. Um, I'm gonna use this tool for our into our Power App. I'm gonna use this tool into our Power App. So we're gonna use this tool into our Power App. Now that we have our resource created, the next thing that we're gonna do is go to our Power App, right? So now, our homepage. There's our homepage for Power App. So now I'm gonna use Express Design to just get our application started. So I'm really emphasizing what Someleze did in the previous episode and what we did last week Tuesday. So I'm using Express Design to create my application. So click next, the rules that we need to follow when using Express Design. Um, I'm gonna name this Inspire SA. Inspire SA. Inspire SA. Inspire SA sent. Inspire SA sent. Start with sample image, as you can see, and then let's look at the images that we have over here given to us. Which one I'm going to use? So I'm going to use this tax planner because it's more appealing to what I'm looking to do. Tax planner, click next. We don't have a data source, so I'm just going to quickly ignore it. Wait for it to load. It's already tagged for me, so I don't need to tag it. I'll keep it as it is since it's already tagged. Next, skip the data source and then create the application on Power Apps. So it's getting things ready. So we're going to be using a mixture of Power Apps and Power Automate. There's also an AI builder within Power Apps, which where you can also use AI tools in your Power App application. But now we're using more extensive AI tools. So that's why we're going to be using Power Automate, because AI builder, as much as it has everything, it doesn't. It's a bit new. It's still growing. They're still adding more capabilities. Now this is for more advanced features of AI. So there you go. Our application has been created, as you can see. Task name created by and all this. So we're just gonna use it as it is to make our sentiment analysis, right? So now after creating our Power App, now I'm gonna jump over to Power Automate. Minimize this. So now I'm just gonna jump onto Power Automate. So here's my Power Automate. How do I actually exactly access Power Automate? As you can see, I just go onto my Office 365. The same way I want to sign into my Power Apps, I click Power Automate. So now here's my Power Automate. When I create new flow, go to create. We're gonna create from a blank instant cloud flow. So now we're gonna choose some kind of a trigger, and the trigger is a Power App. So it's gonna respond to our Power Apps. So that's the trigger that we're gonna need to create our application. So I'm gonna click create. So there you go. So our Power Automate has just been created. So now the next step is to, let me zoom in a bit. The next step is to bring in our sentiment analysis tool via Power Automate. Remember, it automates everything, so that's why we're just gonna take it off Power Automate. There's already pre-existing templates that we can use, but we're going to search for sentiment because we're looking for the sentiment tools. Sentiment. So there you go, right? We have sentiment under Azure Cognitive Service for Language. Same thing that you have on Azure is the same thing that you can also see while you're Power Automate because everything is linked. It's coming from the same place, right? So I'm going to click sentiment because that's the service I'm looking to use, right? So now after clicking sentiment, and now I'm going to enter the dynamic contents. So we're gonna ask from Power Apps because it's what we it's the document that we're getting. Whatever the user enters is what we want to process. So that's what the document ID stands for. What do you want to exactly process? Document text. Again, we're gonna ask from Power Apps. So whatever they entered, it's gonna extract the text from it. And then the last one, document language, we leave it as it is, right? Leave it as it is. So now we're going to have to create a connection, right? Let me delete this connection and start again. We're gonna have to create a new connection. So I'm gonna add a new connection, right? So this is how your connection looks like. You got your API key, you got your cognitive account key inside your URL. So in order for us to get this information, we're gonna have to go back to Azure. So I'm gonna minimize this again, go back to Azure, to the resource that we just created, and then you come over here by keys and endpoint. So there are keys and endpoint. So we have key 1, key 2, the region, and the endpoint as well. So we're gonna first copy the first key, right? We're gonna copy the first key and then go back to our Power Automate application. Go back to Power Automate. Paste it in, and after pasting the key, we're gonna copy also the endpoint as well. As you can see, I'm copying the endpoint back to Power Automate, and paste it again, and then I create it. So now I'm creating my so I'm basically linking my Azure service resource that I created with my Power Automate so that whatever text that the people the user may enter, it may go to Azure process and give us the results. So after our connection has been created, we're now gonna extract the whatever results we get from it. So how exactly do we do that? So the next step we're gonna do is going to add a JSON file. Remember at the beginning I mentioned we talked about JSON. So JSON is a way of passing information from one point in the website to another point in a nutshell. So it's a way of transferring information over the internet via JSON. So that's something. It stands for JavaScript Object Notation. So now the next thing that we're gonna search for is add parse.json. JSON loading. So there you go. It says it's under parse JSON. I've just zoomed in for you to see parse JSON. I've selected it. So now it's asking us for a content. What do you want it to add? So when I click over here, we're gonna click over here for content. So content is what do you want to extract from, right? So so our Power App started by giving us information. From that information, it's connected to Azure. It gets it analyzes the sentiment. The AI analyzes the text, and then it sends it back to Power Automate to send back to Power Apps as a result, right? So the next thing we're gonna look for is the document. So all these variables that you can see over here are apart from the sentiment tools, right? I can get the ID, the sentiment, the message, the target, the code, the count, the text, everything. But now we're looking for documents because documents has all what I've just mentioned in one thing, right? So documents, sentiment analysis per document. Then the next thing I'm gonna do is gonna write a custom JSON code, right? I'm gonna write a custom JSON code to extract certain things that I want from my JSON, right? So now let's take a look at it per se. Let's take a look at it. So I want confidence score, which is a type number, and I also want the sentiment, which is a type of string, as you can see. I want the confidence score and I want the sentiment as I highlighted it in my JSON, right? So now after finishing the parse JSON, we're gonna add the final step, which is to collect this information that we've received from Azure and send it back to our Power App. So now the next thing that we're going to add is something called respond to Power Apps. Respond to Power Apps, right? You see, respond to Power App or flow. So that's the next thing we're gonna put. And now over here, we're gonna pass what we received as a variable. So respond to as a variable. We're gonna enter the variable name. Wanna name this one sentiment, right? And then enter value to respond with. So over here, we can add a dynamic content again. We can add a dynamic content, or we can write our own expression. You're probably wondering what the expression is, but we're gonna write our own expression, right? So we're gonna write our own expression because you're looking for we want to expect certain things. We want to expect exactly the sentiment as it is, and we also want to expect the score as it is. So that's what this one means. First body, right? First body, path.json.sentiment. So it means look in the JSON script that we just written over there and extract the sentiment, right? And I'm gonna press OK. So our first variable is set in. I'm gonna add another one for score. I want text as well for score. And then that's the name of our variable. Gonna write our expression again. And this time we're gonna write .score. .score, and then we're gonna press OK. I'm in .confidence score, my bad. It's actually .confidence score. Confidence score. Confidence score. Press OK. So now that has been added. So now I'm gonna save our Power Automate flow that we created. So 4 simple steps. 1, to respond to Power Apps, send the information from Power Apps to Azure for it to be analyzed by the AI. Then the third one, to extract the information that we got from the AI from Azure, and then we send it back to our Power Apps. That's simply what we just created, and then we're gonna test it out. We can quickly test the flow. It's saving. Let's wait for it to finish saving, and we're gonna test our flow. We're gonna test our flow. So our flow has just been created, and now I'm gonna click test. So you can test it manually or automatically. So I'm gonna choose manually, and I'm say test, right? Let's say test. So now it's asking us to sign in, basically it's a credential to confirm that we are the one using the actual application. It's not somebody else. And I'm gonna say this is awesome without text, right? Run flow. It's running. And when I see our results soon, just now. Wait for it to finish saving. So our flow just ran successfully. And now let's look at the results of our flow. Let's look at the results of our flow. So as you can see, all green ticks, right? It got input from our Power App. This is awesome, right? That's the input that came through. It sent it to Azure, right? Azure, the ID is this is awesome. The text is this is awesome, and then it came out with results from Azure, right? So that's the results that we got from Azure, and then on top of it, we pass it into our JSON, right? So the JSON is like it passes information from one point to another point. So from Azure to our Power App. So this is how it comes through as a JSON. So now we just have to look through our JSON format and pick whatever we need in order for us to send it back to our Power Apps. And that's what we did. We looked for the sentiments that was discovered and the scores that were discovered as well. So you can see the sentiment is positive, the score and the score that came through. So we're gonna use this into our Power Apps that we just created. I'm gonna put this to the side. So now that's in the at the side. Now we're gonna come back to our Power App, right? When I come back to our Power App, so now inside our Power App, it's already designed it for us. So Power Express Design already designed everything for us. So we're just gonna use it as it is, right? So I'm gonna use this text input over here, right, to enter our sentiment. I'm gonna use this description over here to output our sentiment, and I'm gonna use this button over here, create, to process our to process whatever the user has entered. So I'm going to, so as I said, Power Apps, as much as it says less code, more power, there's actually some kind of code involved in this, right? There's actually some form of code to a certain degree that you have to write, and this code is called FX design. Basically, it's like your Excel, the type of language or the type of code that you use in your Excel when you're calculating certain things. The same type of code is the same type of code that you're using for Power Apps, as mentioned. So first thing we're gonna do is first thing we're gonna do is first thing we're gonna do is we're gonna code the description. Sorry about that. We're gonna code our description. So there's description. I clicked on description. So now if we look over here, right, there's default. So then this is the property, like how you what exactly about this component, what exactly about this label that you want to change. So you want to change the default, the format, the height, the color of it, the font, etc. This is the property of this component that you want to change. So I'm just gonna change the default. So instead of text input, I'm just gonna put um I'm just gonna put, let's bring it down. I'm just gonna put sentiment detected, right? Sentiment detected, and then confidence score, and then confidence score. So that's what I'm gonna put. Then the next thing that I'm gonna do is, firstly, before I even proceed with anything else, I'm gonna assign our Power Automate that we just created. So on your left hand side, you come to your menu, you just say add flow. There's Power Automate, there's the tree view, add components, add database, add media, and then there's also add Power Automate with the Power Automate logo. So I'm gonna click add flow, right? So now there's two flows that we have, sentiment flow and Power App. So the one that we created is Power App, right? So I'm going to click the Power App Flow. It's loading, it's loading, it's loading, it's loading. Wait for it to come into our program, into our application that we just created. So after it's added, so our Power App is now linked with our Power Automate flow that we just created. So now go back to coding. Now that we have our automation linked to our application, go back to code. So now we're getting the input from this input over here, and we're displaying it over in this input. So now after coding the description, we're gonna now code the button. So this is the code that we're gonna put in the button. The code we're gonna put in the button. So in the button, on select, right? So this is the property. So when we press on the button, this must happen. That's what on select means over here, right? So I'm gonna go back to take out this false in the fx, take out this false, and type in our new code that we want to add. So now let's take a look at it, that there are no mistakes. So there are no errors in my code. So basically what I did in my code, I first checked if I created an if statement. If the input is blank, then show a pop-up basically to tell the user to enter something, right? And then I'm setting my variable. So I created a variable called vast sentiment to take in the sentiment that the user wants right? So sentiment. So after taking creating my variable, and now run it through my Power Automate that we just created, sentiment.flow.run, right? So now they're giving us an error. Why are they giving us an error? It's because our Power App name that we have, our Power Automate flow that we created is not named Sentiment Flow, but instead it's called Power App. Power App Flow, right? Let me check Power App sentiment.json. So I didn't give you a proper name, but that's the name of our Power App, of our Power Automate flow that we just created. Getting the words mixed up. So now we have. So after creating the variable, we said whatever the variable is, I want you to run it into the flow. So it's gonna extract it from it's gonna extract whatever the user has mentioned, gonna put it into a variable, send that variable to Power Automate. It's gonna process, it's gonna send it to Azure, and from Azure, it's gonna take the results, send it back to Power App as a JSON, and then we take the results and send it back to the user for them to see, as you can see. So sentiment, confidence score. That's what we're sending to Azure, and we're gonna get the same results from Azure, and we're gonna display it to the user. So that's basically what the code does. Right. So text input 2 is the name of this component here, where we'll be entering, and then to output, we just said sentiment detected. The variable that we created for sentiment is gonna be displayed, and the confidence score, the variable that we also created, is also shown. So now what I'm gonna do is run the application, and let's see the results. This is cool, right? This is cool. I'm gonna process it. So now the fact that it's taking long, it means it's being processed. As you can see, positive 0.98, neutral 0.2, and negative 0.1. So it ran. So if we go back to our Power Automate to check exactly what happened, right? So I'm here in my Power Automate flow. We can exactly check how the flow ran, and that's what I'm gonna do. We're gonna check how exactly the flow ran. I'm gonna check how exactly the flow ran. So now you can see succeeded. I'm gonna click on it to see how exactly it got succeeded. We almost finished. Let's see exactly how it got succeeded. Wait for it to run. So now I'm just analyze exactly what happened. So our Power App came with this result. Our Power App came with this result. This is cool, right? So that's what was inputted. That's what was sent to our Power Automate, and that's exactly what we wrote. And now that's exactly what we wrote. And after coming into the Power Automate, it now sends it back to Azure for the AI to do its thing. So now it sent this text, this is cool, to Azure, and then these are the results that came out as the AI did its thing, as you can see, right? So it came up with the confidence score and the sentiment itself. After doing that, it went to the JSON. The JSON, as I said, it takes data from one point to another. So now from Azure, it brings it back to Power Automate in the form of a JSON. So now it extracts the ID, it extracts the sentiment, and it also extracts the confidence score, right? So now after coming through as a JSON, basically our JSON is like a packager or for some kind of packaging that we have, and now we have to respond back to our Power App flow, right? So now we in our JSON we said in our expression we said we want to take the sentiment, right? We want to extract the sentiment itself and the score itself. So the sentiment and the score is what is extracted and it's what's sent back to Power Apps to display to the user, and that's what we displayed. So as you can see, it's simple as that, right? Create your Power App, go to Power Automate, search for what trigger or for what service you're looking for. You search for it, send whatever you want from Power Apps, send it to Azure. It does this thing, and then you send it back to your Power App and just display it as we just did. But most importantly, everything started off from Azure. So it's easy as that um from from it's easy as that to integrate AI solutions to integrate AI in Power Apps is as easy as that. As you can see, this is the code, right? Everything that I just did, this is the code version of it. This is it via code. And now this is it via Power Apps, right? Power Apps. And then on top of it, if you don't want to go through all of that, you don't want to write code, you don't want to write any Power App, and then you have the Language Studio to at your disposal. So you have three things: the Language Studios for non-programmers who just want to test certain things. They got the studio. If you want to implement these things in a certain solutions, or you want to customize it in a certain way, you have, but you don't get heavily involved in code, you have Power Apps. But now if you want to go all the way and get heavily involved in code, then you have the code itself to work through, as you can see. So with that being said, I'm coming to the end of today's session, right? That's the end of today's session. Looks like Carol got disconnected. She's experiencing power problems at her place. So with that being said, thank you again for joining us on today's episode of AI Tuesday on Inspire SA. It was really nice to share this little something with you guys. We are working on having guests on our show. You must stay tuned and just keep a lookout for what's be happening soon. And don't forget to subscribe and tell your friends more about us and share our content. Thank you again for joining, and see you next time.